Right. So I wrote about hair because I mean, it's a very personal thing. I have a thing about hair. And and it's a thing. By which I mean that I spend way too much time watching YouTube videos of women talking about their natural hair. And please, the women here, can you confess if you're like me? So you're like, hey, this is Shanita coming at you from Atlanta. And then they're like, this is the new shea butter that I found. You can see that it has like a curl pattern here. And I just sit and watch this. It's terrible. But I actually want. I think there's a wonderful subculture of women of African descent who are choosing to wear their hair natural. I think it's a wonderful sort of. I want to write an essay about it. It's just really a fantastic subculture that says a lot about politics. But I think hair is not just hair. I think hair, and I think that's particularly for women, right? The men, I love you all dearly, but, you can be bald and do whatever you want, and that's fine. But imagine if Diane Sawyer decided to stop coloring her hair. It would be a problem. It would be a problem. And so I think for white women, color. For black women, it's much bigger. It's texture. It's a question of texture. It's that, well, yeah. But here's the thing. Curly is, in general, not good, right? But the acceptable curly is the white people kind of curly. Yeah, so that's the kind. So in the women's magazines, when they tell you how to care for your hair, straight, wavy, curly. And then I'm looking there thinking, I can't use any of this, and I really would like to know what I can use, but I'm not here because there's no kinky. This doesn't work, right? Even though some of the curly, I mean, we could actually use some products. And in Americana, Ifemelo has some suggestions for white sister friends who have seriously curly hair. Because generally, you can do the same things. You can't too. When it's wet, if you do cornrows, it'll. But no, it's true though. It's true. But I think that hair. I think hair is such a thing. And I started to, when I was growing up in Nigeria, and in many ways it's also a personal story for me. When I was growing up in Nigeria, I didn't really think about hair. I didn't need to. I mean, I didn't think about many things. And I think the reason I started to think about hair here is perhaps because I also discovered race. And I think both were linked. And it just became, I straightening my hair. My sister said to me, you're going for this interview for the internship, make sure you take out the braids and straighten your hair so you look professional. And I thought, oh, okay, so I went and I did that. But at some point I started to think, why do I have to straighten my hair to look professional? Why do I have to go through all of this, to put lye in my hair, to go through the possibility of scalp burns so that I can look professional? And I think for me then it became about questioning who determines what professional is, and why do we live in a world where professional is defined so narrowly? And I just had this moment where I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. That's it, right? And I stopped. But, and I wish I could say that I lived happily ever after. But this would be a lie. Because it took a long time for me to come to feel comfortable wearing my hair the way it grows from my head. When I stopped straightening my hair, I felt ugly. I then started to invest in many turbans because I just thought, this can pass as being stylish, but nobody will know I'm actually just hiding the fact that wearing my kinky hair makes me feel like I'm just not very attractive. And so it took a while. It took a while, but so I wanted to write about that in Ifemelu's journey as well, because in some ways it's not just hair. It's coming into a fullness of yourself. It's about coming into your own. It's about owning yourself as you are. And I felt like I had sort of done that, and I kind of wanted my character to do that as well. And yeah.
Can I just say one thing about that? It's so interesting about hair and race because so there's the angle you're describing, which is the pressure, which is sort of a complicated intersection of race and gender that like you need to look a certain way, and obviously, so it plays out kind of on that dimension of race. But I was also really struck by how it's also, we spend a lot of time intermittently in the book in this hair salon in Trenton. Are we in Trenton? Where are we? And I was so struck by how it's like not only a totally race segregated space, but it's actually the kind of space. It's such a kind of great and precise example of obliviousness to how people different than you live, right? It's a wonderful way to show like, wow, this is just like a space you've never inhabited, literally and otherwise, and it works so well that way in the book.
And yeah, and I because I have visited so many hair braiding salons, I just had to write about them in the book. And actually, it's much of the hair braiding bits actually did happen in the sense that I did in fact have this. I did not help her talk. I didn't help to get her married, as Ifemelu offers to. But this woman who had a skin condition, and she's from Senegal. And it's just very interesting for me because, again, it's a kind of subculture. The West African women, and they're mostly West African, in the hair braiding salons all across America. It's also a thing. There's the boss. It's almost like a mafia, actually, a very mild mafia. And then the people who work there, and you can tell who speaks the best English, who's sort of in charge, and there's just a lot of, and then they have these conversations. And for me, the most fascinating thing is watching them become different versions of themselves. So when an African American woman comes into the shop, they're different. When another African comes in, they're different. And it's just really interesting watching them just navigate these spaces, and they're constantly on the phone sending Western Union numbers to somebody in Senegal, in Mali, in Guinea, in Ghana, and but I did want to say one just last thing about hair, that if Michelle Obama, when Obama was running for president the first time, or even the second time, if she suddenly woke up and thought, I'm not going to do this hair straightening thing anymore, I'm going to just let my hair, I'm going to maybe get dreads. Can you imagine what Fox News, what would happen? They'd be like, Black Panther! She has a gun. And I don't think that he would win. I mean, seriously, he would not win. He just wouldn't. And I think even well-meaning, progressive-minded people might be concerned, because I think there's also a thing about black hair in which it's weighted with meaning unnecessarily. So if she had the dreads, which simply might be that she doesn't want to have to deal with, an afro or loose hair, so she gets her hair dreaded, which is simply the way that her hair grows on her head. But I think for many people, it would mean something.
Identity, which is exactly what you're not supposed to be doing,
yeah.
Right?
And it would, I think, automatically also mean that Obama was suspect in some way. You couldn't entirely trust him. Because, if he's married to a woman who has dreadlocks, you just never know what else he's going to do.